My husband invited another woman over without telling me, then said I was the problem. Imagine leaving your home for a few weeks thinking everything's fine with your marriage, only to return and find out your husband has been hiding something huge behind your back. That's exactly what happened to me, and I'm here to share my story with you. This is a story of betrayal, lies, and how I found out the truth when I least expected it. It all started when I decided to visit my mom for a little while and take a break with our baby. I thought everything was fine at home, that we were in a good place. Sure, we had our ups and downs, but nothing out of the ordinary. I couldn't have been more wrong. Today, I'm sharing the painful truth about how my husband lied about a friendship with another woman, brought her into our home while I was away, and then turned everything around to blame me for everything that went wrong. I still don't fully understand how things escalated so quickly. It's been hard to wrap my head around, and even now, I'm still processing the shock of it all. I want to take you through how everything unfolded, how I learned the truth, and what's happened since. It's been a tough journey, and I'm still figuring out how to handle everything. By the end of this video, you'll understand why I'm questioning everything I thought I knew about trust, loyalty, and my marriage. You'll see how a small lie turned into something much bigger, and how I've had to come to terms with decisions I never thought I'd have to face. It's been hard, but sharing this story with you is one of the steps I'm taking to make sense of it all. Let me give you a bit of background. My husband and I have been married for almost 5 years, and we have a 1-year-old baby together. It's been a roller coaster, to say the least. The past year especially has been incredibly hard on us. Having a baby brought so many changes, and honestly, it felt like everything was getting more stressful by the day. We were barely keeping it together, and there were even times when we seriously talked about separation or divorce. We were just struggling to find our rhythm in this new chapter of life. I decided to visit my mom for a few weeks with our baby, thinking that a little distance might help, that it would give us both some space to breathe. But during that time, everything went downhill. What I didn't know was that while I was away, my husband was making decisions that would change everything for us. Like most couples, we went through some rough patches, especially after the baby. Adjusting to parenthood is hard, and we were both trying to figure out how to balance our new roles as parents while also keeping our marriage intact. The truth is, we weren't communicating well, and everything felt like it was slipping through our fingers. We would argue about small things, miscommunication, and of course, the pressure of raising a child. But what I didn't know was that while I was away, my husband had been hiding something from me. During that time, he continued to work closely with his assistant. She was someone he had been working with for a while, and at first I trusted him completely. He always said she was just a friend, nothing more. But something about their relationship started to bug me. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I felt like there was something off. The way he would talk about her sometimes, or the way he'd act a little too casual about her. Something didn't sit right with me. But I pushed those feelings aside, telling myself I was just being paranoid. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of everything falling apart. I first found out about his friendship a few months ago, and let me tell you, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It all started when I was casually going through his phone one day, something I'd never had a reason to do before. But that day, something didn't feel right. I noticed that he had renamed her contact under a man's name. It was such an odd thing to do, and immediately a red flag went up. He said it was no big deal, that it was just a nickname he used for her, but I wasn't buying it. It felt like he was hiding something from me. I let it go at first, but then I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, so I kept an eye on it. A few days later, I stumbled across messages between them. At first glance, they seemed harmless, just the usual work talk. But as I kept reading, I realized that these messages were way too familiar. They were sharing personal details, joking around in ways that felt inappropriate, and there was a level of comfort between them that I couldn't ignore. It made me feel like I was looking at something more than just a professional friendship. The more I dug, the more I found. Over time, I saw how often they were talking, sometimes multiple times a day, even late at night. It was clear they were in constant contact, and that's when things started to get really concerning. But it wasn't just the frequency of the messages that bothered me. I started seeing things that made my stomach drop. There were messages that were flirtatious, sometimes even crossing a line into the inappropriate. Little jokes, terms of endearment, and comments that didn't belong in a professional relationship, let alone any friendship. When I confronted him about it, I was upset, trying to hold back tears, but he just got defensive. He brushed it off like it was nothing, telling me I was overreacting. He said I was just being controlling and that nothing was going on. He assured me that I had nothing to worry about, that it was all in my head. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. There was something more going on, and he was lying to me about it. Then, the excuses started. He told me multiple times that the friendship had stopped, that he wasn't talking to her anymore, and that everything was fine. But every time I looked, there they were, still messaging each other. They worked together every day, yet he kept insisting that it was nothing, that it was all just a misunderstanding. But it was becoming clearer to me with each passing day that this wasn't just a friendship anymore. Something more was happening, and I was being lied to, right to my face. Here's where it gets even worse. While I was away visiting my mom, trying to focus on our baby and take a break from the stress of our marriage, my husband decided to bring this woman, his so-called friend, into our home. The very thought of it still blows my mind. How could he bring her here? Into our shared space where we've built a life without even telling me. After everything we had gone through, after the countless discussions we had about trust and boundaries, I thought I knew where we stood. But clearly I was wrong. I felt a mix of shock, anger, and confusion. It felt like a betrayal on a level I didn't even know was possible. How could he do this? How could he bring her here, especially after everything he had promised me? It didn't make sense. I couldn't help but think, if he was willing to do this behind my back, what else was he hiding? It felt like he was rubbing it in my face. So naturally I confronted him about it. I expected some sort of explanation, some sort of apology, but instead, he flipped the script. He didn't even try to defend his actions. He didn't care about the hurt I was feeling. Instead, he got angry with me and accused me of spying on him. As if I was the one who had crossed a line. He said it was my fault that I didn't trust him and that I was overreacting. I couldn't believe it. How could he turn this on me when he was the one who betrayed me? But it didn't end there. He told me that he was done, that he was contacting lawyers to start the divorce process. Just like that. In a moment, everything we had built was over. He was finished. I was speechless. I hadn't even gotten a chance to process everything, and he was already making plans to end our marriage. It was like he had checked out completely, emotionally, mentally, and now physically. He had already made up his mind, and I was left there, feeling completely blindsided. And then, as if this whole situation wasn't painful enough, he took off his wedding ring. Right in front of me. He didn't even hesitate. He looked me in the eyes, took the ring off his finger, and said, "I'm done." He made it so clear that he had no intention of fixing things, no intention of working through this. That moment, watching him remove his ring, felt like the final blow. It was in that instant that I realized just how much he had checked out of our marriage. He was done, and it felt like I was the last to know. As if everything that had already happened wasn't enough, my husband didn't stop there. He went behind my back and told his assistant all about me. Everything he could to make me look bad. They started laughing about me, dragging my name through the mud, making jokes at my expense. It was humiliating to know that while I was away, dealing with our baby, and trying to stay focused on my own responsibilities, they were sitting around laughing and gossiping about me. It wasn't just the fact that they were talking about me behind my back, it was the way they did it. She called him Love Muffin, as if that wasn't bad enough. And he had the nerve to say it was just a joke, that it didn't mean anything. But I knew better. I knew the truth. They were mocking me, and he was just playing along. The laughter, the teasing, the way they acted like I didn't even exist, it all hurt more than I cared to admit. But what really stung was when he looked at me and said, it felt good to feel something again. He said it like it was my fault that he was looking for attention outside of our marriage. He claimed that he was just trying to feel alive again, like some sort of validation he was missing. And then he told me that I had forgotten him during my journey through motherhood, as if that was the issue, as if I was the one who wasn't trying. I was overwhelmed, trying to adjust to being a mom, trying to manage everything at home, while he was out there, getting validation and comfort from someone else. The more he spoke, the more I felt like he was shifting the blame onto me for his own actions. But none of this was my fault. I wasn't the one breaking our trust. It didn't end there. No, it got worse when I saw the messages between them. I shouldn't have gone through his phone, but at that point, I couldn't trust him. And I needed to know what was going on. What I found was disgusting. They were texting each other like they were some kind of couple, and I couldn't understand how he could behave like this. One message he sent her said, "Laying in bed, having a rum and coke, alone with no body heat to keep me warm." It made my stomach turn. Was he trying to make me feel guilty for not being there, while he was emotionally, if not physically, connecting with someone else? And the worst part? The sexual messages. The ones that were so inappropriate I could barely stomach reading them. He told her, "Give me some sugar," and she responded with, "I'm sweet enough." And then, in the next message, he says, "Prove it." I felt sick. He was talking to her like this while I was in another room, caring for our child, trying to keep everything together. How could he do that? How could he disrespect me like this, especially after everything we had been through? The humiliation, the gaslighting, and the betrayal, it all hit me at once. It was as if nothing mattered to him anymore. All the sacrifices I made, all the love I gave, none of it was enough for him. And yet somehow, I was still the one being blamed for everything. The entire situation felt like one big mind game, and I was the one losing. The moment I confronted him with everything, the lies, the hidden messages, and the woman he brought into our home, it was like a switch flipped in him. There was no remorse, no apology, just an overwhelming amount of blame being thrown my way. He didn't even try to deny anything. Instead, he immediately started accusing me of being too controlling, too suspicious, and too emotional. It was as if all the trust I had placed in him, all the years of our relationship, meant nothing. He told me that I was the problem, that I was the reason our marriage was falling apart. It was almost like he had convinced himself that I was the villain in this story, and he was the victim. He said things like, "I just needed to feel something again," and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was justifying his actions as if my love and support weren't enough. I had been trying my best, dealing with the challenges of motherhood and managing our family, but he seemed to think that it was my fault he was seeking attention elsewhere. The more he spoke, the more I felt like he was blaming me for everything wrong in our relationship, turning the whole situation around to make me feel like I had destroyed something that we both should have been protecting. But then came the final blow. After everything had been laid bare, after all the truths were exposed, he looked at me and told me, without hesitation, that we were done. He said it so matter-of-factly, like it was no big deal. "We're done," he said. "We'll just do what's best for our son." There was no emotion in his voice, no fight, no willingness to even try and fix things. It was like he had already checked out, and I was just a leftover part of a life he no longer wanted. What hurt the most was how easily he said it. He didn't seem to care about the future of our family or the life we had built together. There was no talk about trying to salvage our marriage, no attempt to even understand how I was feeling. He had made his decision, and there was no changing his mind. It felt like the final nail in the coffin. The moment when I realized he wasn't the man I thought I married. He was someone else entirely. Someone I didn't recognize. Someone who didn't care about me the way I thought he did. That was the moment when it all hit me. I had been fighting for something that he had already given up on. I didn't know what to do next, but one thing was clear. I couldn't keep holding on to something that he was so willing to let go of. I'm still trying to process everything. Every day it feels like I'm walking through a fog, barely able to see clearly. I keep asking myself, how could the man I married, the one I trusted and loved, turn on me like this? How could he lie about something as serious as his friendship with her, bring her into our home, and then act like it's all my fault? It doesn't make sense. It feels like I'm living in a nightmare, and I keep waiting to wake up, but the reality is too harsh to ignore. He blamed me for everything. It's like he twisted the whole situation and made it my fault for not trusting him. But I never imagined he'd betray me like this, especially after all the struggles we've been through together. We've been married almost 5 years, and I thought we'd gotten past the hardest parts, that we'd built a foundation strong enough to handle anything. But now, I feel like everything I believed in has crumbled beneath me. The pain is still so fresh, and every time I think about what happened, it cuts even deeper. I find myself replaying every moment, questioning what I missed, where I went wrong. How did I not see the signs sooner? But then I realize it's not my fault. I never expected this kind of betrayal, not from someone I thought I knew so well. He was my partner, my confidant. We made promises to each other, and it feels like he broke every single one. Now, I'm left with the biggest question of all. What do I do next? I feel heartbroken, completely lost in this mess. My mind is torn between wanting to fight for our family and realizing that maybe this marriage isn't worth saving anymore. I've given so much to this relationship, put so much energy into making things work, but now I feel empty, like I've been pouring myself into something that was never truly there. The love I thought we had seems like it's been replaced with lies, distrust, and heartbreak. I can't keep living like this, wondering every day if I'm being deceived again. I don't want to destroy our family. I want what's best for our child. But I also can't keep pretending everything's okay when it's not. I can't live in this emotional turmoil anymore, wondering if I'm being taken for granted. The truth is, I don't even know who he is anymore, and it's hard to keep investing in something that feels like it's already over. I'm at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. All I know is that I can't keep sacrificing my peace of mind for a relationship that's leaving me more broken every day. I need to figure out how to move forward, but the path isn't clear, and I'm still trying to find my way. In the end, I've learned something that, honestly, I wish I didn't have to. Trust is everything in a relationship. It's the foundation. Without it, everything else falls apart. Once trust is broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild. I've spent so much time trying to hold things together, doing everything I could to make this work, but it feels like I've been doing it all alone, and that's what hurts the most. I keep asking myself, why was I the only one trying? Why wasn't he fighting for us too? It's hard to accept that my husband didn't value our marriage the way I did, that he wasn't as committed to making things work as I was. I put my heart into this relationship. I gave my all, and in return, I got lies, betrayal, and empty promises. Looking back, I now see that sometimes, no matter how much you want to fix something, you can't do it on your own. A relationship takes two people, both willing to put in the effort. I had to come to terms with the fact that I couldn't keep forcing something that wasn't being reciprocated. My worth wasn't being honored, and I deserved more than that. No one should feel like they're constantly being taken for granted, especially in a marriage. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on this, and it's not easy. I can't change what happened, but I can learn from it. Moving forward, I've realized that I need to trust myself more. I need to believe in my instincts and never let anyone make me feel like I'm the problem when they're the ones betraying my trust. It's important to never lose sight of your own value, no matter how hard things get. You deserve respect, honesty, and loyalty in a relationship, and if that's not being given, then you need to reassess where you stand. I want to hear from you all. Have you ever had to confront something like this? A betrayal, a broken trust, or a situation where you realized the person you loved wasn't who you thought they were? I know I'm not the only one who's gone through this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and advice in the comments below. Maybe we can learn from each other's experiences.